last year or so. So what I'm going to do, I have a set of slides that I'm going to share with the group, and I'm going to hopefully describe them as we go through. And then when that's all done, we'll have a Q&A, and the Q&A does not have to relate to any of this stuff. It could be totally different trails if that's what you want. So let's just share this, and hopefully we'll make this work here. Let me see. Okay, can you all see that?
Yep, we're good to go, Jeff.
Okay. All right. So I've titled this "Finding the Trail Less Traveled: Techniques for Locating Virginia Hikes Without Hordes of Other Hikers." And I've got a few examples thrown in. Jonathan's already been through who I am and where I come from, so I'm going to skip right through there. The talk has 3 parts: discuss some of my techniques for finding uncrowded trails, throw out a few suggestions for hikes in the Virginia Shenandoah Valley area, and then Q&A. And so because this was a boring slide, I threw in this picture of Hightown, Virginia, which is one of my favorite places in Virginia. And obviously you can drive right there. It's on US 250, just before the West Virginia border. And I think it's the most beautiful place in the entire state. So we start off with a question: what do the blue areas have in common with the rest of Virginia? And that's sort of an interesting question, because it's may not be totally evident, but the combined population of those blue cities and counties equals the population of the rest of the entire Commonwealth. And so I think that that's really key in deciding where you go in order to avoid a lot of other hikers. The closer you go to Northern Virginia, the more likely it is that trails are going to be overrun. And during the pandemic, through the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, which I am very involved in, I hear a lot of stories about trails that have just tons of cars in their trailheads. So we're going to go through some techniques to maybe get you out there so that you can find some nice trails without having to put yourself through the crowds and have to put your mask on and take your mask off and put your mask on and so on. So this is a horrible slide. It's got way too much information on it, and I will fully admit that, but we're going to go through it quickly anyway. My rules of thumb for hiking in solitude.
Jeff?
Yes.
Are the slides moving for other people? I don't think I'm still on the original slide.
No.
Are you? Okay, thank you. Let me see what I can do.
Yeah, we're just seeing that cover page from the PDF right now.
I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong here. Let me try sharing again. Although I can't even find the button to share. You think maybe that was the stuff that we were doing earlier, Jonathan?
It should be.
I don't get any choices.
Let me go ahead and stop that sharing there.
No, I do. No, I do. Wait a minute. Let me try this again. Anybody see anything now?
Yep, we are getting your rules of thumb now.
Okay, see a big old thumbprint?
Correct.
Okay. Unfortunately, I can't see it now. So let me play around with it for a second. Okay, can you still see it? I didn't mess it up there, did I?
Nope, we're good to go.
Okay, good. All right, so now you know why I was saying this is a horrible slide. There's way too much information on here. But I've got 6 rules of thumb, and then I've got my list of the top 10 most popular mountain hikes in Northern Virginia. And people may quibble with me on some of these, but basically I think the top 10, number 1 far and away is Old Rag. And Old Rag is a spectacularly great hike. If you've never taken that hike, you should put that on the top of your list. It's absolutely a wonderful hike, but it's also incredibly crowded, and it's fairly close to Northern Virginia, and that creates the problem there. Mary's Rock, also very close to Northern Virginia. So you can go through most of those. There's a few of them that start to get away from Northern Virginia. Number 10 is the AT through Three Ridges. I ask everybody I come in contact with when I'm hiking Three Ridges Wilderness, and almost all the time they tell me they're from Tidewater. So for some reason, Three Ridges Wilderness is a Tidewater mecca. But all of those have a ton of people. So the further you get away from the Capital Beltway, the better off you are. Stay away from the popular trails. Weekdays are better than weekends, are better than holidays. So if you can get out during the week, a lot of times hikes that otherwise might be crowded are fairly empty. And get on the trail early in the day. When I was trying to hike all of the trails in Shenandoah National Park, I put off hiking the trails up near Front Royal until dead last because I figured they would be really crowded. And one time I showed up at 8 o'clock and to the toll booth there, and there was nobody else in line. And I sat and talked with the ranger for a good 5 minutes until somebody else came along. I went off, I did my hike. I was on a fairly obscure trail, never saw anybody during the whole time. And this was Labor Day weekend. And when I was done at about 12:30, I got in my car and drove down to, I think it's 211 that goes through Luray, and came out of the park. And there was a 1.5 mile back up trying to get into the park at 12:30 in the afternoon. Whereas at 8 o'clock, there was nobody. So you get there early and that helps you. Pick the trailhead that's further down the road, because if there are two trailheads, people will most likely go to the nearer one. And number 6 is have a good map, or better yet, own and know how to use a GPS and a map. Both help. So, and we can talk about that later too. The perfect storm is Old Rag on a nice October Saturday afternoon. And I found this wonderful picture online of Old Rag on an October Saturday. It's not far away from the Beltway. It is a popular trail. This is a weekend. It's probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon. These people are literally queuing up in line in order to hike part of the trail.
And Jeff, again, there's something going on where we're not seeing your slides advance here.
Okay.
I don't know
Just
if you
scroll down.
there it goes. Yeah, I think you just got to. There it is.
So it has to. I have dual screens here, and the problem is, let me try that. Okay, can you still see it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing the Old Rag What If. There's the perfect storm.
There.
Okay.
So there's the picture of everybody standing in line to hike part of Old Rag. You know, I don't know about you, but that's not my idea of a good time. So, which always makes me think when I do hike Old Rag, and I've hiked it probably 5 or 6 times, and I usually hike it in January. The big what if instead of being one of the closest hikes to DC, it was over around near Waynesboro. If you look at what Google is telling me there, it's only about 35 minutes longer of a drive, but I think that mentally it would be a much different drive, and it would be probably not nearly as crowded as it is now. All right, so the techniques that I use. There's a wonderful website called Hiking Upward. And I'm not just saying that because I saw that Tony is one of the people that's in our audience right now. This is a website that's been up for a while, and it's done by a guy named Tony Van Vude, and out of Northern Virginia. And he is a programmer, and he does a spectacular job in putting this website together. And it's got a ton of good information in it. And I am one of 5 or 6 people that regularly contribute to it. One of the great things that it has is it has a sortable hikes map, and you can see it circled in yellow there. So if you come to hikingupward.com and you click on the sortable hikes map, you're going to come to this page. And if you look at the yellow circle thing, you can circle for solitude. And as you can see, the map there shows basically from about Hot Springs and Stanton north up to Winchester, in the area that the Sierra Club chapter is located, and it finds a number of hikes that are rated 5 or 6 in solitude. Now, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to have that solitude when you go there. These are basically chosen by the people that write it, and it could be that they got it on a day that there wasn't anybody, and maybe on other days there might be more. So, you never know for sure, but it does mean that there are quite a few choices out there. And I want to just throw out there for those folks that don't go hiking quite as often, this is also a wonderful resource for you to determine the types of hike that you want to do. If you want to do a hike that's only 5 miles or that doesn't have much elevation gain and isn't that difficult, you can set those parameters here, and the map will show you which ones out of the Hiking Upward collection will work for you. So I just think it's really well done. So kudos to Tony on this. So technique number 2 is another website that I use a lot, and it's called hikingproject.com. This is a website that's put together by REI, the big outdoor outfitter. And it includes trail rankings, it includes hiker reviews. And the thing about it is that the data comes from the USGS National Map Database. And I've been digging into that a lot recently, and I find that a lot of their alignments are old. They'll have incorrect trail locations. And so you have to be a little bit wary about it. But if you have a GPS, you can download the tracks and you can use that in your receiver. And so that's one thing that I use in addition to Hiking Upward. If I'm looking for something that's a little bit more obscure, they're gonna have a lot of stuff off the data frame. And then finally, I use something called Strava. And if you're not familiar with Strava, Strava is not used by hikers as much as it's used by mountain bikers and trail runners. And basically all these people who are out there trying to come up with their best time ever running 5K with 5,000 feet elevation gain, they have it all measured on their watch, and it goes to Strava. And Strava tells them how well they're doing and helps them with their fitness goals. At the same time, Strava takes all of that data and puts it all together so that if different people are hiking the same place again and again, or traveling the same place again and again, the lines become brighter and brighter. And so what you're looking at here, it takes a little bit of time to sort of figure out, but over to the left there, you see, it looks like we're flying over this area at night, and you see an area with a little bit of light. That's actually Harrisonburg. And just to the right of that is Massanutten Mountain. And so all of the areas in there are the trails and that sort of thing. And this may not make sense yet, but I'm going to get back to it, and I think it will make more sense later on. And then finally, books and maps help too. I am the membership chair for the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, so I'm going to put in a plug for those folks. They maintain the trails in the Lee District, in the North River District, in Shenandoah, on the Appalachian Trail. A lot of the federal trails that you hike are not maintained by federal employees. They're maintained by volunteers, and those volunteers are often from the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club. So patc.net, if you care to join them and contribute to that so that they have more equipment to do it. One of the things they also do is they publish maps and they publish guidebooks. And you can see several of the guidebooks that would apply for this area. And I find that these guidebooks are wonderful for coming up with trails that I hadn't known about. They'll have descriptions of the trails. I'll combine it with the maps, and that's how I come up with a lot of these things that I'm doing. This Great North Mountain Trails book is just really, really good. I think it's within 2 years old. The same thing with the Shenandoah Mountain Trails. they've really gotten me out checking out trails that I otherwise wouldn't have done. And they tell you how to get to these trails, and I think they're wonderful. Then there's also the Best Day Hikes in the Shenandoah Valley. That is published by the Appalachian Mountain Club out of Boston, but it's written by a couple of folks that hike extensively in Virginia, and it's a really good book. Okay, so let's move on to probably more interesting stuff, and let's look at some trail examples. There are literally hundreds of different trails that we could pull out, and I just want to throw out a few that I think are interesting and are ones that I've hiked relatively recently, so I can tell you that the quality of the trail is pretty good. We're going to start off with one that is surprisingly unknown, and I think that that's because it's hard to find. It's called Anthill Slate Lick. It's basically due west of Broadway. So it would be northwest of Harrisonburg and southwest of, say, Newmarket. The trailhead is very hard to find. It's got very, very low use. And it gets a little overgrown in the summer as a result, because I don't think they have people that are really maintaining it. But it's got some wonderful views and it's got wonderful solitude. I've got a map here. The map is also on wanderingvirginia.com, so that you can get it off of there if you need to. You can see there approximately where it is in the lower left hand, and you can see that it's a fairly aggressive hike from the elevation profile there. But so here's an example of Strava. Strava allows you to look at it by types of use. And so for all uses, that is on the left there, that is what the trail looks like. And if we go back there, you can see there's a basic circle to this trail. And then we go back, you can see the basic circle. But if you look at the bike usage comes off to absolutely nothing over there. And runners and hikers, parts of it are absolutely not hiked at all. So you're gonna, if you try this trail, you've got my map, and it's also on Hiking Upward, and I can tell you that you won't run into too many people. When I did it last September, I ran into 2 people right at the end, right next to the fishing lake. And the irony is that it has a fishing lake, and there wasn't even anybody fishing at the lake, because it requires a 3/4 mile hike to the lake. So the fishermen would rather go to ones that I guess they can drive right up to. The next one is Elliott Knob. Elliott Knob is a little more popular. Elliott Knob is actually the highest point in Northern Virginia. It's higher than anything in Shenandoah National Park. And at the top of the knob is an old fire tower that you can climb up, and the views are absolutely spectacular. I'm gonna guess that there are 5 trailheads that reach Elliott Knob, and I'm gonna guess that 80% of the people that hike it hike from the trailhead that's on Route 42. And so one of the great things about it is that there are several other trailheads that will get you up there. Chances are you won't see anybody until you get to the top. So qualifies as a trailhead further down the road. And I will tell you that I think that the trailhead, the trail that most people take is a horrible trail, because it's open to the sun. It's an old road for a great portion of it. There's a picture of what it looks like. Just hiking that in August is no fun at all. And frankly, I don't understand why anybody hikes it, much less being the most popular way up the mountain. So if you drive a little bit further and you take some of the Forest Service roads and you end up on the Deerfield side of the mountain, there's a wonderful trail called the Cold Springs Trail that I like so much that I signed up to maintain it so that it's in pretty good shape. And it's much more shady than this, and a very scenic trail. So there's a couple of pictures of it there. And the picture at the bottom is a panorama from the fire tower. So you can see what a great view it is. So I can't recommend that one highly enough. I go back there again and again, and I absolutely love it. The heat map here shows you the Falls Hollow Trail down at the bottom is easily the most used way up to the top. The Cold Spring Trail is the way that I'm recommending. There's also a way from the south, but I think that that's a little bit overgrown, and I'm not going to recommend that. You know, that's why I use Strava, is so that I can see where uses come from. A little further north, we've got the North Mountain Trail. If you hike a lot, you've probably hiked to points near here. I think that Big Schloss is a spectacular hike, and it's one of the most popular hikes in Northern Virginia. I think that Big Schloss is great, but when I want to hike and not run into people, I hike a little bit further south on the North Mountain Trail. And there are a number of trails that come off of North Mountain, basically south of Elliott Knob, which is another big point in on the North Mountain. You get south of there down towards Church Rock and north of there, and you're going to have wonderful views without hardly anybody out there. I did a few weeks ago on a Tuesday, I did a 9-mile loop there, and I didn't see anybody the entire time. And it was just great out there. The views are wonderful. And if you download this map off of my website, you'll find where the parking is, and there are very easily accessed overlooks from there. People who are not strong hikers can get wonderful views out there. But again, it's further down the road than if you were to park and go to Big Schloss. Hon Quarry is due west of Harrisonburg. It gets probably more people than these other hikes that I'm telling you about, but at the same time, it's relatively low, and there is a waterfall out there that I think is absolutely spectacular. And so I'm recommending it to people as a great family hike that doesn't involve too many people. If you look at the map there, you basically you park next to a fishing lake, and then you walk up a gated road for a mile or mile and a half, and then go off onto the trail to the waterfall. I saw people when I was last there bringing kids who were 4 or 5 up the road to the waterfall, and I'm sure that they had a great time once they got there. So there are a few shots. You can see the waterfall itself. It's probably about 20 feet high, but it's really a wonderful spot, and I didn't see anybody at the waterfall when I was there. You can combine that with a loop hike that's much more strenuous, and you get some views up at the top of that mountain. So that's a wonderful family kind of outing. Okay, Kennedy Peak. Kennedy Peak is on Massanutten Mountain. It's on the east side, and accessing Kennedy Peak is something that a lot of people do from the top, from an old hang gliding spot, and most people don't go the way that I'm recommending here. Now, I will tell you, this is a tough hike to get to Kennedy Peak and back. But if you get up to Massanutten Mountain, you can get beautiful views of the Shenandoah River, and you don't have to go all the way to Kennedy Peak. And this is an area that's really tough to get to for people who live in the Beltway area. If you're living in the Washington, D.C. area and you're coming out to Massanutten, you have to drive down through Elkton and then come up a road from the south in order to get to this trailhead. There's no connection to the north and to Interstate 66. So it really keeps a lot of the people away, in my opinion. So I recommend this. It's got beautiful views. The the river is just spectacular. And you can also look down on Shenandoah from there. And there's some pictures of the views along the trail. The Massanutten Trail itself is fairly rocky. Interestingly, I think that Massanutten Mountain itself has different geology than either the Blue Ridge where Shenandoah National Park is or the Appalachians where say Great North Mountain is. I'm no geology expert, but I've been told from folks that know what they're talking about that it's very different. And one of the results that I see is that it's much rockier and it makes for tougher hikes. The Cellar Mountain Trail is further south than anything else that I've talked about here. A lot of people go to St. Mary's Wilderness. There's a little waterfall in St. Mary's. It's exceedingly popular, but yet there's this other trail that is a mile and a half away that literally nobody ever hikes. And last year, the PATC, along with a group called Wild Virginia, cleared that entire trail, and it's in wonderful shape now. And it's really a nice hike if you want to get some solitude and a couple of views. Finally, I want to recommend something that isn't a hike at all because I don't know that people know about it. This is fairly new. Out in Highland County, just a little bit east of Monterey and just off of US 250 is the Sounding Knob Fire Tower. This used to be further south, and a private party took it down, renovated it, and put it back up on private property much closer to 250. And you can climb up to that and you get some really amazing views. And it's in Google Maps under Sounding Knob Fire Tower, so you can find that. I will tell you that I've climbed those stairs and there was a little bit of a wind and it was terrifying. It was really something. So, climb as far as you want, but you can actually get up into the building at the top and the views are spectacular. And then a final shout out. Part of our group, the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, is working on a trail right now called the Crawford Knob Trail. And that is one of the closest trails to Stanton, but it's in horrible shape. And you can see what the before and after looks like. So that is one that is going to be in the next couple of months back and in good shape. You can see from the Strava page that I've got there that there's absolutely no use of that trail either. So that's a great one. It's a very steep trail. It's a great workout. But it connects you with other trails that go to Elliott Knob and eventually out to Ramsey's Draft. So it's part of a very large network. So let me see if I can get out of this. Hopefully we haven't lost everybody and we can open this up to questions.
Thanks so much, Jeff. So just so folks know, the chat is open. If you don't feel comfortable unmuting yourself and asking a question, you can feel free to put a question in the chat and we'll make sure folks get that. Jeff, my question real quick for you is, would you be willing to share that PDF that you've been going through in the chat, or send it to my email and I can get it into the chat for folks to be able to see?
Yeah, it's on my website right now.
Perfect.
wanderingvirginia.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, Jeff, it's Margaret. How are you today? Hey,
Hi,
look,
Mark.
I had a question for you, and this is less for the hiking enthusiasts like myself and yourself. But if I had visitors in town who are reasonably fit, but aren't like I am interested in a 10 or 12 mile outing, I was wondering if you had things that you would recommend for them. And it doesn't have to be a short drive. It can be a longer drive with some really good things to appreciate, but not necessarily an all day type thing. I wondered if you had some suggestions about that.
Well, I'm a big fan of Lexington. I know that's a little south of the footprint that we're talking about here, but I love driving down to Lexington. I think it's a beautiful town. A few years ago, they actually threw dirt on the streets and made it into a movie set because it looks like an old Civil War town. And And I love that. And then close by to there is a hike that you may have taken to Pete's Cave. Um, and the great thing about Pete's Cave is, once you get up to the ridge top, you don't need to walk hardly at all in order to get spectacular views back to the east towards the Blue Ridge Mountains. Pete's Cave is something that is found on hiking upward.
Thanks. That's a great suggestion. Appreciate it, Jeff.
Yep.
Do you have any thoughts on High Knob, which is off of 33 going into West Virginia?
Yes, I love that. I think that's a great hike. It's a little bit more crowded than what we've been seeing. I have a son who goes to JMU, and I keep telling him he needs to go there and take his girlfriend and hike there. And honestly, I don't know what it is about JMU guys. Maybe Jonathan can tell us since he works there. JMU students would rather drive up to Reddish Knob than hike 1.5 miles to High Knob and have a much better view. So I don't know what to say about that, but High Knob is a wonderful hike.
Thanks.
In fact, just to go a little bit further on that, there's a wonderful website out there called Friends of Shenandoah Mountain. And those folks, the folks behind Friends of Shenandoah Mountain, they're trying to turn the eastern slope below High Knob into federally designated wilderness. And so there's some interesting information on the website. I believe it's www.friendsofshenandoah.com, I think.
Yeah, I just tossed that in the chat for folks.
Good, thank
Yeah.
you.
We got a question in the chat saying, so from Jeff, it's out of this area, but are you familiar with Spice Run Wilderness in West Virginia?
I think so. I think that Spice Run is, I think it's just a little bit east of the Greenbrier River Trail and south of Babcock. Is that right? What, State Park? A little bit south of Marlington. Is that the one that you're asking about, Jeff Phillips?
Yeah, my microphone doesn't work very well, but that's what I'm thinking about. And they turned it into a wilderness a few years ago, but access looks like it's nearly impossible.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was involved in a challenge a few years ago to hike 10 or more miles in as many wilderness areas as I could come up with. And I would look at Spice Run, and I'm pretty sure the easiest way to get to Spice Run would be to take the Greenbrier River Trail and then wade across the river and hope that you don't drown in order to get to the wilderness, because there's no trails. And I mean, it's sort of the ultimate in wilderness, if you think about it, because there's nothing there at all. And I'd love to visit it sometime, but I've never made it there.
That's what I'd heard about it, is that one access is by fording the river, which sounds like that would be difficult to do unless the water level is pretty low. And I think there's some old fire road or something on the east side, and there are no trails within the wilderness itself.
Right. Yeah, I think it's you got to be very adventurous to give that one a shot. I'd love to hear about it if you make it out there. I see a couple of things on the chat. One is, do you have any suggestions for trails that are dog friendly? You know what? I believe all trails are dog friendly, honestly, because I take my dog on every single trail I take, other than obviously Old Rag, which is not allowed. But I really enjoy taking my dog, and especially in the national forest where I don't have to keep her clipped. I maintain I'm a little anal about this, but I maintain a record of how many miles she's hiked. And she's up to 2,720 miles as of today. So I'm trying to get her to 3,000. You saw her in several of the pictures there. But that North Mountain Trail, I think is wonderful because the dog can just run off and are not going to, get into anything. it's, you're on a ridge top. On the other hand, it is turkey hunting season right now. So if you're taking a dog out into the national forest, I suggest that you do it after noon. I believe, if I get this right, I believe that hunting is only allowed until noon because the female turkeys stay on their nest until noon, or else maybe it's the other way around. They forage in the morning and then they stay on their nest. At any rate, it's designed to protect the female turkeys. I put orange on my dog, and I make sure that she's, even because you just never know what a hunter's going to mistake for whatever they're going after. So, but I've been on almost all these trails with my dog. I see a question about Laurel Fork out in Highland County. I was out there last summer. There's a couple of things that I would say about it. I wouldn't go too deep into the summer. On the east side of Laurel Fork, I found a lot of stinging nettle. The trail was hard to find, and the stinging nettle was all over the place. And if you've ever encountered stinging nettle, I'm thinking your kids would never want to go backpacking again if you take them on some of those trails. So get them fairly early, but it's still a beautiful area. It's also the access. Some of the maps show access from the northeast. And I was on that trail last year and I found it totally impassable. So unless that's been taken care of, I think you've pretty much got to come in from the west, the northwest of the corner where there's a major parking area. But I think it's a delightful area, and it's not that hard to hike because a lot of the trails are old rail trails or old railroad beds. And so it's great for kids. And I always wanted to take my Boy Scout troop there because it's not that hard. It's wonderful, wonderfully secluded, and you can't get any cell phone service at all. And I used to love doing that to the scouts. So we take them to Braley Pond to camp a lot because it's inside this little bowl and they can't get anything. Massanutten Mountain, inside Massanutten Mountain, it's the same way. And it's so great that when you've got them in a place where they're just stuck. So
yeah, that's good information about the nettles. My only trip there was in March, so the nettles weren't out then. And but fording the river was a little bit chilly that time of year, so I haven't been back.
and that's a problem certainly in the spring.
Yeah,
I do know that one of the fords, there was a metal cable that was designed to help you get across. But I went once in October and I was basically stuck because I wasn't going to go across that water. It looks really swift at times.
yeah, it was about mid-thigh when I went across in March, and then it rained the entire weekend I was in there, and it was waist high when I came back. So that was a bit chilly.
I see any recommendations for taking an 8-year-old lives in Front Royal. There are, I think that the trail from the south, from Edith Gap to Kennedy Peak, is very doable for a child of that age, and I think it ends up being about a 5-mile hike round trip. You have to get there fairly early because parking has been severely restricted in recent months. The story that I get from my buddy, the hiking upward guy, is that there's a state policeman that lives right in that area, and he was mad that people were parking outside of the legal area, and so there are very much certain areas where you need to park, and it may get full. But if you can get parking at Edith Gap and walk up to Kennedy Peak is wonderful. They have an old fire tower there, and the views are spectacular. So I would recommend that. You know, anything in Shenandoah, I remember as a 9 or 10-year-old coming out from Illinois and seeing where I grew up and seeing Dark Hollow Falls for the first time and Lewis Falls right near the Big Meadows campground. And I've never forgotten that. It was just wonderful. So any of the waterfall hikes in Shenandoah, if you know, I don't think those are bad ones either. And there's a great book that the PATC puts out called Circuit Hikes in Shenandoah National Park that you might want to check out. Good hiking trails at Seneca Rocks. There actually is a trail up to Seneca Rocks and back down that's wonderful. I wrote about it in Hiking Upward, and you can find that on that website. I thought it was a great hike, and it had great views, and there were all ages that were going up there. My understanding is that is the most popular hiking trail in the entire state of West Virginia, is the trail up to Seneca Rocks and down. So well worth taking. Looks like I've run out of the chat ones. Does anybody else have something that they'd like to ask or talk about, or?
I can say, I'm Winifred Stevenson and I'm from Highland County.
Yes, Winifred, how are you?
A new thing that's been really good. And I run a Facebook page. It's not anywhere near the caliber of 10-mile walks, although I try to get some of those in there. I'm an old lady, but it's called Hike Highland, and it's Highland County, Bath County, a little bit of Augusta County. They have things like the Hidden Valley and Bogan's Run, and which is on one of your lists, I think. And I have done all of these, and I post pictures and trailheads and stuff. It's just photographs mostly. But if anybody's interested, please check them out. We've got some very nice stuff up in Highland, and people don't know much about it. So.
I love Highland County. It's my favorite county in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I'm very jealous.
I'm a little attached to it myself.
Well, Jonathan, I think we're good here. If you want to tie it all up.
Sure thing. Yeah. I mean, we do have another, if folks want, we do have 13 minutes, but yeah, if folks don't have any other questions, then we can feel free to call this a night. But yeah, this was a really great talk, Jeff. We appreciate your time. Oh, Kathy's unmuted. Kathy, do you have a question?
Well, since nobody else has anything, what do you think about the Strickler Knob hike on Massanutten?
You know, Strickler Knob is an interesting, it's an interesting hike because you know, when it was asked about the 8-year-old in Front Royal, you know, that's a potentially good hike for a kid, but getting to Strickler Knob can be a little bit of a strenuous undertaking. There's one time when I took it, there's a section of trail getting back to the car that's incredibly steep. And the interesting part about Strickler Knob itself is that that the knob it's blazed, but it's not an official Forest Service trail. And I don't know that matters, and that may change in the future because it's such a popular hike. But I just find it kind of interesting that probably it's certainly one of the most popular hikes in Virginia. I know that a website that I go to quite a bit called Virginia Trail Guide, that's written by a wonderful couple that lives near the Massanutten ski area. They say that Strickler Knob is one of their top searched parts of their website. So I know that a lot of people are hiking it, even though it's not on a maintained trail. But the views are spectacular.
Do you know anything about Indian life there? Any Indian mounds or remains of Indian life there?
No, I'm not familiar with that. Do you know something you can tell us?
No, just, family myth.
Okay.
So, but I do think the Smithsonian has been involved at some point.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Well, hopefully that'll hit the papers and we can read about it. I'd love to know more.
Right.
Well, all right. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Again, keep a lookout on our Facebook pages. Get out to Jeff's page. Check out Winifred's page again that she mentioned there about Highland County hikes as well. And keep the conversations going online. Definitely keep the chat going on the Facebook pages and reach out to folks if you have additional questions.
Yep. Thanks for having me. And if folks have additional questions, an email address you can get a hold of me is jeff@hikingupward.com. So shoot me a question.
Excellent.
Great.
Thanks so much, folks.
Thanks very much. Yep.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.